Hi, everybody. All right, all right. Thanks for being here. I'm Tara Parker, and I have the honor and the privilege to serve as Dean of the College of Education and Human Development here at UMass Boston. Welcome to our symposium on this wonderful occasion of celebrating the inauguration of Chancellor Marcelo Suarez Orozco. We're glad you're here. Over 60 years ago, Ruth Batson, mother of three, challenged the school committee to acknowledge de facto segregation in Boston public schools and to address the negative impacts of that segregation, noting that predominantly Black schools had inadequate facilities, limited resources, and 2/3 less funding than predominantly white schools. At the time, the school committee refused to make any such acknowledgement, saying instead that the condition of the schools was due to poor parenting and misbehaving students. 61 years ago, the Boston school system pitted itself against the community. Representing the NAACP at a meeting of the Boston School Committee in June 1963, Ruth Batson read 14 demands to improve public schools. At the end, she said, "The school administration and the community must join forces to erase the faulty image they have of each other if we are to be successful." You might question the ability of the community to raise to the occasion, and I answer that just as we rise to the occasion to pay our taxes, for which we get small return, we will rise to the occasion to see that our children are no longer shortchanged in the education they receive. Today, we celebrate the community and the university as an important part of that community, joining forces with the schools and the city to continue the legacy and activism of Ruth Batson and other civil rights leaders here in Boston, as we have formed a new partnership that is engaged in co-developing our neighborhood schools to transform education as university-assisted community schools, starting right here in our own backyard with the BCLA McCormick. That also has proposed a new name, and that's the Ruth Batson Academy. So today, you will learn about what university-assisted community schools are. You will hear about the successes of UCLA community schools in Los Angeles and learn about what we are planning and doing here in Boston. So thank you. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Dr. Tiffany Donaldson, who is our Associate Dean for Innovative Research and Community Partnerships. Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tara. I join you here today as a mother of BPS students, former and current, as a resident of Dorchester, and a lifelong faculty and recent administrator at UMass Boston. I'm Tiffany Donaldson. I have training in behavioral neuroscience, but I learned from my mom that you had to be a part of the community, live in the community, and work hard alongside the community. So I'm excited to be in the College of Education and Human Development, and I was really drawn to the conversation about community and the prospect of developing this relationship with BCL at McCormick. So as your moderator today, I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Emily Woods, followed by Dr. Dean Christie, and then I'll introduce our panelists and ask them to come up and have a seat, and then they'll share with you as well. Dr. Emily Woods serves as Director of Educator for the Richard K. Lubin Family Foundation. Previously, she was a teacher with the Boston Public Schools, so she was also born and bred here. She's a senior co-trainer in BPS, the new teacher development program. She holds her PhD in urban education, leadership and policy studies from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, right here in College of Education and Human Development. Emily Woods is the author of The Path of Successful Community School Policy, adaptation, and she's, again, a proud PhD alum, and the book has received amazing claims. If you haven't gotten a look at it, you really should. Dr. Woods will be followed by UCLA's Dean Christie of the School of Education and Information Studies. She'll share some of the lessons learned in Los Angeles and UCLA's University Assisted Community Schools. And we're also hoping very much that Dr. Woods shares some of her insights from her research in operationalizing community schools and differentiating university assisted community schools. So I invite Dr. Woods.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the lovely introduction. So again, I am Emily Woods. I am a proud graduate of the Urban Education Leadership and Policy PhD program. My dissertation studies and subsequent research were in the area of community schools and community school policy. But there are still a lot of people who know way more about this field than I do. But I can say that I do eat, sleep, and breathe community schools. And I credit my time at UMass for giving me the passion for this work, the ability to look at the history of community schools and at best practices around the country while asking critical questions and keeping in mind the many social justice implications in this and any public school reform effort. So my goal today is to do two things pretty quickly. I want to talk about community schools and what they are, and also to talk about school and university partnerships. So let's start with community schools. So what are they? Many of you probably have a good sense. For some of you, the term may be fairly new, and some of you may have totally different definitions than the person sitting next to you. So in a nutshell, community schools are a strategy for organizing the resources of the school and community around student success. And I don't have slides, so I'm going to say it again. A strategy for organizing the resources of the school and community around student success. So this definition came from a woman named Pat Harvey, who was the former superintendent of St. Paul Community Schools or public schools. So there are a couple of things in this definition that are notable. The first is that Pat was careful to describe community schools as a strategy and not as a program. So this is an important point, especially because we've all been conditioned to think in terms of programs, services, and interventions. So unlike a program, strategies like community schools typically do not have a predetermined beginning, middle, and end. They change over time, often integrating existing and new partners and also different funding streams. And community schools are usually multifaceted and adaptive, requiring multiple constituents to inform and drive the solutions they generate. Community schools, you could say, are more like smartphones. They deploy collaborative leadership structures that help educators connect and translate these needs to be able to open the right app at the right time, to pool resources, and to think more expansively. So maybe a way to imagine it is this, sort of maybe think about it this way. So picture this, like a beautiful brochure of after-school opportunities that Guardian's kids can sign up for. And now maybe picture these same opportunities as apps on the smartphone. It's almost like you can touch on these programs or apps when you need them and also have the flexibility to adapt these apps to meet community priorities. But don't get me wrong, programs, services, and interventions are absolutely important components of community schools. We need high quality programs and services. The difference is this: community schools create the connective tissue amongst these programs, if you will, as well as the decision-making processes that make them most relevant and best utilized. So I guess a friendly amendment to the definition I read before twice is that it is a strategy that organizes the resources and the voices of the school and community around student success. Okay, so where does the university fit in? So let's set the community school piece aside for a second and start by talking about all school and community partnerships. A fancy but simple definition for a school-university partnership is an organized arrangement in which schools and universities come together in pursuit of shared objectives. And I'll only subject you to that once. But school-university partnerships aren't just one thing. They exist on a continuum. They can be really simple. where you have students from the university come in and offer tutoring services. School-university partnerships can also be really, really complex. Universities can invest in a more multi-pronged and a visionary approach and truly become a long-term institutional anchor to combat the highest level of systemic issues. There's also a lot in the middle. So the way that I like to think about school-university partnerships, whether they are partnered with a community school or a more traditional school, is in terms of a third space. So you've got three areas of focus: the schools, the universities, and the third space, which is the joint entity that will ultimately be recognized as the partnership. This is the work. It's a dance. It's a negotiation where the knowledge and expertise, the values, the goals of both institutions come together and create a new entity, a third space that is hopefully greater than the sum of its parts. So when a university pairs with a community school, the potential for what can be accomplished and dreamed of in that third space only amplifies. A community school brings with it deep, deep understandings of the needs of the community and the students, and a committed and collaborative leadership team that is ready to dig into the work and bring community members together around a common mission. The university becomes a super lead partner, and with it comes access to the full resources of the university. So with UMass Boston, you've got research capacity, amazing teachers, strong academic curricula, and I can vouch for these last two firsthand, tremendous human and financial resources, and a long-standing commitment to community-engaged scholarship. You also have the added horsepower of a chancellor who comes with a true understanding of and commitment to and vision for the work that is a university-assisted community school. UMass is poised to be an exemplary lead partner to help create the third space for this partnership. Because again, this third space is where the potential lies and the magic happens. A tremendous opportunity is in front of us, and I look forward to watching it unfold. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Dr. Christina Christie is the Wasserman Dean of the School of Education and Information Studies at UCLA, and also Professor of Education in the Division of Social Research Methodology. She's an internationally recognized scholar whose work focuses on undergraduate education evaluation as a method for facilitating social betterment. As part of this work, she has developed studies to advocate the theories and methods used to measure educational, social, and behavioral changes. These result from program innovation and reform efforts. She has been recognized with numerous awards that have honored her distinguished career and the contributions that she's made. She was recently the recipient of the 2018 American Educational Research Association Research on Evaluation Special Interest Group. She's been the recipient of Distinguished Scholar Award and the 2019 American Evaluation Association Research on Evaluation Distinguished Scholar. Before being appointed Wasserman Dean, Christie served for 5 years as chair of the Department of Education, and prior to that, 6 years as division head of social research methodology. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Christie.
Thank you so much, and it's really an honor to be here. What a wonderful celebration and an opportunity to talk about some of the community school work we do at UCLA. So you will note in that introduction that I am not a scholar of community schools, right? So we heard from a scholar of community schools. I have, though, participated in the evaluation of the community school work that we've been doing at UCLA over the course of some years. And I'll start with our sort of origin story around this work, and that was the Rodney King riots. I was not on the faculty at that time at UCLA, and our building is in the central quad of UCLA. It's one of the original 5 buildings, Moore Hall. And shockingly, it needed to be retrofit. And so you might too, now that you've had an earthquake, that everyone on the West Coast is texting about, by the way. I believe it was a 4.8 and its epicenter was in New Jersey. I never thought I'd say that. Our building, our faculty were in a building on Wilshire Boulevard, and it was a high-rise building, and several faculty were looking out and watching the city burn. And Jeannie Oakes, who some of you may know, who apparently is in the very, very last stage of her life right now, looked out and said to our colleagues, "What are we doing here? And why are we not there?" And that was an important moment because it really served as a catalyst, and her interest in her work and her energy to starting what we would describe as, and this started back in the 90s, and maybe if we were to do it now, we might describe it slightly differently, but our work in Center X. And the X stands for the cross between research and practice. And what's interesting about Center X is that it holds 2 of our professional programs. So it's really unusual to have a center have 2 professional programs, our teacher education program and what we call our Principal Leadership Institute, which is our administrator credential program. Alongside all of the work that we do in, now it's early care and education as well as K through 12. At that time, it was really just K-12 work. And we worked to understand that third space. And our partnerships began, as you talked about on that continuum, really, I would describe it in a way where we were tinkering. We were this institution that was located in Bel Air, and we were moving our way to engage with communities that were not in Bel Air, with families who have never been to Bel Air, but with faculty who wanted to work with people in our teacher education program to inspire them to work in the schools that were located outside of this little area of Los Angeles that we'd kind of been insular and insulated in. And so all the years later, our school is deeply committed to the work that Jeannie, I think, imagined as she looked out that window that day. And it's, in fact, what we do. And the community schools that we worked with LA Unified on establishing were just a next step in that work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those community schools. We also were selected by the state to serve as the State Technical Assistance Center for the community school initiative that the governor invested in several years ago, and I'll explain a little bit about that too. So I'm situating the community schools in what you see is this kind of this wave of investment that California has made in schools. The problem in California is that we have something called Prop 13, and that limits the tax revenue that goes to support our public schools. And so what you have are then governors and other elected officials who have to sort of peel off one-time allocations or legislation to fund public education. It's not the best way to do it. But if you see here, right in the center, we have a $1.4 billion investment in community schools. And that sits alongside these other investments that you see. Now, the problem with this is that the tax rolls have gone down in California, and we're looking at some of these resources being clawed back right now. I mean, I was on the phone yesterday trying to make sure that some of these resources are not pulled back to address the state deficit. So we had the California Community Schools Partnership Act, and here's what that investment looks like, right? So there were planning grants. The first cohort 1, had 192 local education LEAs, right? Cohort 2 had 226. With the implementation, we had, so first they had planning grants, sorry about that. And then from the planning grants, the partnership is obviously between an LEA and and sometimes with the university, but with other actors within the community context. And so the implementation grants were awarded to 76 LEAs, which amounted to 458 schools. In cohort 2, 128 LEAs, 570 schools. So, we're looking at almost 1,000 schools in California that are going to be community schools if done the right way. The research has been translated, at least in our state, into the 4 pillars. And faculty at UCLA have contributed to this research, I think, in very meaningful ways. So the 4 pillars, as you can see here: expanding learning time and opportunities, integrated student supports, collaborative leadership and practice, active family and community engagement. Again, these are not considered programs or interventions. Very similar to what you're saying, we're calling them pillars, but really they're pillars of a strategy, right? Our 4 cornerstone commitments: commitment to asset-driven and strength-based practice, commitment to racially just and restorative school climates, commitment to powerful, culturally proficient and relevant instruction, and a commitment to shared decision-making and participatory practices. And then there are the 4 conditions of learning, which I won't read to you, and then these kind of 4 proven practices, which we use as part of our technical assistance work. So we're trying to get all of the grantees, and I'll show you how we're set up, engaged in these 4 practices: community-assisted asset mapping and gap analysis, a community school coordinator at every school site, site-based and LEA-based advisory councils, and integrated and aligning this work with all of the other relevant programs. And you see that at the macro level in that wave of what's been invested, but at that school site level with what's actually happening within the school site. So this kind of shows you how we really do have an opportunity right now, and it's exactly what we don't want is for a bunch of programs, right? We don't want a collection of co-located wraparound programs and student support services. What we want is this collaborative, cross-sectional partnership, common vision, goals, democratic, sustainable. So this is really about a culture and a way of being within the context of a school and how we think about engaging in teaching and learning with our young people. So we have 2 community schools. RFK UCLA Community School, that's the one on the top. That was the Ambassador Hotel site. I don't have to tell anyone here the significance of that site. And we were one of 6 schools that opened at the Ambassador Hotel site in 2009. Oh, Marcelo, you walked in at the perfect time. It's in the Pico Union area of Los Angeles. It's a very diverse school. And then we have the Mann UCLA Community School, which if you didn't find Marcelo in his office and you were wondering where he was, you had to ask the question, is he in South LA bothering those people at Mann? He loves Mann and Mann loves Marcelo. So for those of you who made the visit, you saw that. So very different school contexts. We established the partnership in 2017, and it was to reimagine a 90-year-old school in South LA that really was a pillar of the community when it was an effective school that was educating children well. And we worked very hard to develop relationships within the community before we established that relationship formally, before that MOU was signed. It was 3 years in the community, knocking on doors, introducing ourselves, asking people to come join us, building trust, finding really what was going to motivate people to send their children to a school, and I'll get to that slide in a moment. I wish it was here. That had incredibly low enrollment, underperforming. It was the lowest performing middle school in the district. So what are our university assisted community schools? So they're neighborhood schools. So that means that you have to live in that neighborhood to attend that school. So LA Unified now has choice. You still have to live in the neighborhood to attend one of our community schools. And we were very intentional about that, particularly when we established RFK, because we imagined that lots of people didn't have to travel too far a distance and would be interested in attending a school that had UCLA's name on it. And what we wanted was a community school. We didn't want a school that was attracting folks from outside of the neighborhood who were wealthier, who were more privileged, who had greater access and opportunity to flood the school. Rather, it had to be a community school. It is a SPAN school, and so it's now TK through 12. And we have actually established a P through 20 pipeline with the RFK Community School. It has to be a mutually beneficial approach. And it has to improve the quality of life and learning for the community while advancing our mission as well. But it can't be the university coming in as the authority on what it means to be a good school. And that's so critical to this work. So we're democratic at every turn. This is inside the RFK Community School. So they're teacher-led schools, elect to work agreements, work groups, governance, classroom ecology, family engagement. Work extends beyond the classroom. It's in partnership with others in order to advance deeper learning as well as social justice within the community. So a good example here is Marcella was key in bringing a legal clinic to this school site. Many immigrants in this community without legal status. We had to build the trust of the community to engage in this service that we were going to provide at the community school in partnership with our law school. It is the success story of UCLA Law School. It really is. And we see it as such an important piece of what we do at RFK. One, but very important piece as a community school. We're a teaching school. So students enrolled in our programs are engaged in activities at these schools. And that's from undergraduate students through our doctoral programs. So we have, we engage very deeply with our teacher education program. Many of the faculty at our two community schools are graduates of our teacher education program. You'll see that Anna Marie Francois and Karen Hunter Quartz edited a volume really around preparing and sustaining social justice educators that's focused on the work that we do in these community schools. This one I had to show. I just wanted to show the mural because it's so amazing and it would resonate here. We're diverse. We're a neighborhood public school in central LA. This is RFK. Just described RFK to you. TK through 12. This is the demographics of the students at the school, which reflects the demographics of the community. 81% Latino. Most of those families are Central American immigrants. 10% Asian, mostly from Korea, Filipino, Black, and other. 35% are English language learners. 13% of our kids are in special education, and 92% qualify for free and reduced lunch. So we have 54 teachers at the school. Half of them are Bruins, 80% are teachers of color, and 85% are bilingual. The Horace Mann Community School was established, as I said, in 1927 as a pioneer in modern education in South LA. And this is a story of what happens to some neighborhood schools when you introduce school choice. As school choice expanded, enrollment literally plummeted. You can see on that little chart there, which I really, I like so much. So the red are the charter schools, and you can see the Mann enrollment right below it. And you see as the increase in charter schools, you see the decrease in our enrollment. The blue are co-located charter schools. And then the ones with the lines through them is when those co-located schools closed. But you can see where we started in 1990 with 1,500 students, and in 2017, there were 415 students. At that time, 75% of them were in the foster care system, and 75% of them had IEPs. We still have a pretty significant population of children in the foster care system, as well as children receiving special ed services. So while that has shifted, it's still a very significant proportion of our population. What we did that was so significant, though, is that we completely turned over the teacher workforce. And so now we have a diverse workforce. 41% of them come from our teacher education program, 70% are teachers of color. And what's important about having gone through our teacher education program is our program is grounded in social principles of social justice very, very deeply. And so you don't apply to our teacher education program if that's not the kind of teacher you want to be and you don't want to work in underserved urban schools. So it's really an important opportunity for our students to be engaged, but also to fulfill their own aspirations of really working in communities that we're in support of high quality education. So this is what our ecosystem of partnership looks like with these two community schools. So you can see how they've grown over the years, right? So keep in mind, RFK has been open for quite some time now. So we have service learning. We bring in the Center for the Art of Performance at UCLA. We have theater, film, and television, UCLA Unicamp, where the kids they go away and they camp in the sequoias. We have our teacher preparation program, as I talked about, UCLA Impact, which is a residency program, all of our research and development, CREST, which is our center that develops assessments, student assessments, CenterX. All of this is wrapped up in what we do at the community schools. So every year we have 200 Bruins at our community schools. Students, teachers, lawyers, researchers, interns, guest lecturers, tutors. We are so engaged in the work of the schools. This is just a quote that I thought that Karen, it's such an important quote that from Karen, and I thought it would be juxtaposed nice with the quote from RFK, but I'll read Karen's. In Los Angeles, the halls and classrooms of the UCLA community schools are filled with tiny ripples of hope, wearing school backpacks and speaking many languages. So this is our Center for Community Schooling. And this is where, when we entered into the space of really working across the state, as I shared, we are the State Technical Assistance Center, but we also are the Regional Technical Assistance Center. And those technical assistance centers have to prepare a competitive grant application in partnership with an LEA. So it has to be an LEA and a university partner. And you'll see that that what we do through this work is really push at the practice level, the policy level, but also now at that research and academic level. So Karen and colleagues have established a journal called Community Schooling. And you can see these are the 4 areas in which they publish in that journal. And they received a grant to start the journal. If you look at what it looks like to engage in a community school effort throughout the state of California, you can see how, why, and what of community schools in that transformation. So the why, the how, and the what. And those are the pieces that we really emphasize in our work as a state technical assistance center. So you can imagine now that you have the California Department of Education that's engaged with the State Technical Assistance Center, which is engaged with the Regional Technical Assistance Center, which is engaged with the County Office of Education's districts and charters, and then the community school sites. And that's the whole system of what this $4.1 billion investment looks like in the state of California, and how each of those entities takes on such an important piece of this work. And then here's the 4 dimensions of the technical assistance. And I circled meaningfully engage the public, because I think it's those 3 areas that leads to meaningfully engage the public, right? So it's in those 3 other areas: developed a shared and transformative vision for systems of change, engage in deep dives to support and document systems change. This is the area in which I have advised the group on. We don't want traditional evaluation that looks at student level outcomes with student assessments. We need deep dives. We need information that's going to be used with community partners, engaged in the discussion of shared governance and other kinds of democratic processes, and then create communities of transformative practice. And I think you use that engage in the deep dive information to help facilitate those communities of transformative practice. And this just explains what they are. And now I would love to have a conversation about all the wonderful work that community schools can do. I'll tell you something, it's hard work. As you can tell, before we convened today, I took a look at how many funding sources we have, external funding sources that support our work, and right now we have 14. So it's a deep investment. When you think about a university assisted school or university partnership schools, there is deep investment that universities are positioned to support in the work differently than districts can. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a lot. I felt the commitment and the long-term and long-standing relationship and partnership. And I feel, again, proud to be standing here as a member of the College of Education and Human Development in UMass Boston, because we too have had long-standing relationships with Boston Public Schools. We have had and engaged with teachers, we've trained the teachers, and we work with schools, and we're really excited to let you hear about some of the work that we've done in the past and some of the work that we're planning in the future. So I'm going to introduce each of our panelists. I'll ask you to come up after I introduce you, and then you'll hear from each of them, and then we'll open it up for questions. So our first panelist is Dr. Christopher Martell. He's an associate professor of social studies education here at UMass Boston and College of Education and Human Development. He's particularly interested in social studies teachers in urban and multicultural contexts and how they teach for social justice, how they use culturally relevant and sustaining pedagogies and engage their students in critical historical inquiry. He is involved in several partnerships with the Boston Public Schools, including working on the UMass Boston Canala Institute's BPS Boston Public Schools ethnic studies syllabi and case studies projects. Supervising student teachers in the UMass Boston Teach Next Year BPS teacher residency program. He also collaborates with BPS district social studies leaders through the Big Cities Social Studies Group. He's been designing an elementary social studies curriculum widely used across BPS, while also being a BPS parent of 4th and 6th graders. My heart, yes. We're really hopeful that Dr. Martell will tell you about his work and how, again, this longstanding partnership has been impactful. So Dr. Martell, I invite you to the stage. Dr. Martell will be followed by Dr. Rebecca Granger, who is a senior advisor for youth and schools for the city of Boston. Rebecca Granger served her first decade in education as a department chair and high school science teacher at Sierra High School in Colorado Springs. For over 20 years, Granger has created learning spaces designed to interrogate systems which bolster racial inequities and our contributions to their continued propagation. She is driven by the belief that the role of educational spaces is not to save, but to act with intentionality to increase access to opportunity and provide space for informed choice. She is recognized as a distinguished educator and Hall of Fame distinguished alumna. As a fellow of the Institute for Learning, University of Pittsburgh, Granger served as a scholar practitioner bridging the divide between educational research and the K through 12 classroom. Through professional development, curriculum design, and partnering with researchers, she pushed the boundaries between educator and student roles, asking learners to create the learning environment and partnership. She holds her doctorate in education leadership from Harvard Graduate School of Education. Prior to joining the Wu administration, Granger led the instructional design for Black Futures Lab's Black Policy Institute, a 30-week policy advocacy and leadership training fellowship designed to prepare selected fellows to make legislative and policy interventions that advance Black political power, change the way power operates, and improve the lives of Black people. Dr. Granger will share with us why this work is so important to the city of Boston and Boston Public Schools. I invite Dr. Granger to the stage as well. And finally, Dr. Lorna Rivera will share with us some of the community schools work we're already doing and where we are hoping to go in the future with this partnership. Lorna Rivera is the director of the Gaston Institute for Latino Community Development and Public Policy and faculty in the Leadership and Education Department, again, in the College of Education and Human Development at UMass Boston. She completed her PhD in sociology at Northeastern in 2001. She's a proud graduate of Chicago Public Schools, a first-generation college graduate, and daughter of Puerto Rican migrants. Professor Rivera has published dozens of research articles and reports. The award-winning book, Laboring to Learn, Women's Literacy and Poverty in the Post-Welfare Era. She oversees the Latino Studies Success Program and the 38-year-old Talented and Gifted, or TAG, and Proyecto Alerta after-school programs and summer learning institutes. Her leadership has been recognized by several awards, including 50 Most Influential People of Color in Higher Education, Latinx Amplifier Award, and the Talented and Gifted Latino Champion Award. Dr. Rivera has been a featured guest and writer in newspapers, radio, and television, and most recently appearing on GBH's Basic Black and Under the Radar. Welcome, Dr. Rivera, to the stage as well. Again, We'll hear from each of our panelists in turn, but as you're talking, and I'd also like you to think of these questions for you, Dr. Martell. Why are you excited about this work? You're all busy people. Why are you engaged in this work? And for you, Dr. Granger, why is centering equity and inclusion an important part of this work? And for you, Dr. Rivera, why are you most inspired to do this work? And how do you also center equity? So we'll hear from Dr. Martell.
Hi, my name is Chris Martell, and I direct the middle secondary education program here at UMass Boston. I also work closely with our Teach Next Year residency program at Boston Public Schools. And I guess my job here is to really talk about our foundation, talk about our past, and what UMass Boston has already been doing in our collective work with Boston Public Schools. Many of you heard earlier today of our long history dating back to Boston State College, and that was our roots are really as the first place to prepare teachers for Boston Public Schools, which turned and blossomed into this really important university here in the city. We've had a lot of partnerships in the College of Education who developed with Boston Public Schools over many years, and it's really not going to be able to talk about all of them. I'm going to change the slide and just but really going back, there are some long partnerships with formerly Georgia High School, the Tech Boston Academy of Worcester, and also we've had a lot of work with the Denver Elementary School, which supports the campus here, and this new partnership with the future Batson High School. There we go, very good. And along the same lines, we've also had I don't know, we must be close to almost close to 25 years, maybe 20 years of the Teach Next Year residency program. It's a pipeline teacher program in Boston Public Schools. You may not know this, but UMass Boston is the largest provider of teachers to the Boston Public Schools. We're also, because of the diversity of our students, one of the largest providers of teachers of color to the Boston Public Schools. And I think that's a really important piece of our story. As in a region with very many predominantly white institutions, the College of Education has an important role in ensuring that the teachers in Boston look like the students in Boston. And I have to really give credit to all my colleagues. I'm really here to uplift them because I'm really just a spokesperson. And I want to highlight the work of Lisa Gonzalez, who's directed that program for a real long time and is a Boston resident herself and had children in the schools and really has a passion for the Boston Public Schools. I'd also like to highlight the work of Lorna and TAG and Alerta. It's a very important program for Latinx students in the city. Many of you probably know about their summer programs and all the great work they're doing to keep students academically, socially engaged in the summertime. We also have my colleagues over at Counseling and School Psychology have been doing some amazing work from UMass Boston Children's Hospital, Student Behavioral and Health Screenings Program, and Melissa Perot and others have been, I think I read somewhere around 26,000 students receive free screenings through that program. And these are some of the wraparound services that we're already involved in that we hope we can kind of expand and center in our new partnerships with our BCLA Reform and Batson High School. And then I'd also like to highlight some of the work my early childhood education colleagues in my department of curriculum instruction are doing. We've had a major grant recently to increase the number of early childhood educators in the city of Boston, including the Boston Public Schools, providing free undergraduate education. And as you know, early childhood educators are severely underpaid nationwide and here in the city of Boston. And we're finding ways to provide free education and provide more early childhood educators. If we can put up the slide. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about, because I don't want to talk too long, is about some of the work that I've been engaged with UMass Boston's collaborative of Asian American, Native American, Latinx, and African American institutes here on campus. We have 4 of them. It's kind of a colloquial name for the group. And you can see all the list of faculty members that I'm really just kind of an organizer and developing the real good work of collaborating with the Boston Public Schools ethnic studies teachers, some of the ethnic studies leaders, to ensure that there's an expansion of ethnic studies courses in the Boston Public Schools. The district made a commitment to have all students take ethnic studies. I think it's hopefully by the year 2027, but you know, those work sometimes it might take a little longer, but we'll get there. And in that project, we developed, well, it really started with something called Boston Through a Wider Lens, which was initially funded by the Mass Humanities, which gave PD to teachers to teach ethnic studies, to integrate ethnic studies in their classrooms, particularly through a local lens. A lot of times ethnic studies teaches the national story, and not what did the different ethnic communities look like in our city. And from there, it grew into a project to help develop syllabi for senior level courses, which would be Asian American studies, Indigenous studies, Latinx studies, and African American studies. And then it led to a series of case studies to help teachers focus on local events. So one of them involved history right here on our campus about Black mother activists in the Columbia Point projects, which eventually led to the creation of the Dever and the McCormick Middle School here on Columbia Point. So it's really very much connected. As well as additional case studies on Puerto Rican activism in the Villa Victoria housing development, the tragic murder of An Mai, a Vietnamese American immigrant here in Dorchester in the 1980s that led to a lot of civil rights activism, as well as a case study on the history of Native symbols and mascots here in the city of Boston. So if you have a phone on you, you can scan this QR code and kind of explore a little bit more of the work we've done. I'll give you some of those curriculum materials for you to look at and share with teachers you know. Additionally, if you have a cell phone, you can download the Pocket Sites app, because one of the things we did was we created walking tours, one of which is right here on Columbia Point, of these historic sites that BPS students can do with their teachers and learn the local history in the palm of their hands. Thank you very much. Professional development with the Canal Institutes. If you click it again, here's some images of our work with the curriculum. Thank you so much.
Right, hello. I feel like I brought too many things to the party. I don't know why my lap is so full right now. It's been passive things for you to carry as well.
I'll hold anything you need, just let me know.
What an exciting day to be here at UMass, celebrating the official inauguration of Chancellor Suarez Orozco. Congratulations. And thank you to Dean Parker for inviting me to join the conversation and elevating university-assisted community hub schools and the partnership between UMass Boston and BCLA McCormick. I'm honored to be here to represent City of Boston and Boston Public Schools. We work very closely together, and Boston Public Schools is a department of the city. I feel like sometimes that's lost when we're thinking about the conversation. As the senior advisor to the mayor, I have the privilege of working really closely with Boston Public Schools. And as a former high school teacher, rethinking how we engage in secondary education is a passion that is deep in my belly. So I am loving working on this project. I think what would be helpful today is to think in 3 parts. Think through the school, the district, and then the importance of the partnership. So if we think first through the school, I see you, Principal Johnston. I am honored to also be representing. So if I miss anything, you let me know, okay? All right. BCLA McCormick is a relatively new school. And in that time, they have been on a journey. In 2018, BPS announced a grade reconfiguration to phase out middle schools.
And this means shifting the majority of schools in BPS to PK through 6 and 7 through 12s. This allows for a more seamless path and for fewer transitions. It also means that there are a lot of schools that are going to have to go through change. In December of 2020, after a series of engagements, the Boston School Committee voted to bring together BCLA, Boston Community Leadership Academy, which was a 9 through 12 high school in Hyde Park, and the McCormick Middle School, which is just down the block here in Columbia Point. So they joined together to form a 7 through 12 school community. And the schools joined together under a promise to renovate the campus into a state-of-the-art secondary school. In 2021, Andrea Johnston was brought in as head of school to lead the BCLA McCormick Joint School. And I'm such a fan. Principal Johnston is a veteran educator with 20 years of experience as a math teacher. She's led at multiple schools and at the central office. And to just give you a flavor for Andrea, she facilitated professional learning in social justice mathematics. So she was weaving together her passion for rigorous academics through mathematics with her deep belief that all students should have access to their roots and a deep and rigorous education. And you can feel that along with the joy when you enter into the BCLA McCormick. But there have been some bumps along the way. To this day, the school is split across 2 campuses. Andrea doesn't get air miles, but she should. And the 12th graders will be the last class to graduate from the Hyde Park campus. So the 7th through 11th graders are in the Columbia Point campus. Next year will be the first year that the full school community will be together, but the space is tight. And it's really not well suited for their size or the needs of a secondary school because it's being housed in a former middle school. And so Andrea and her team are getting creative with space and figuring out how to hold all the kids and to wrap their arms around them in love. I'm going to take a moment to describe the joined community's demographics, but numbers don't tell us everything, but they do paint a picture. BCLA McCormick serves just shy of 600 students. They're primarily Melanin Blessed community, 28% identifying as Black and 61% as Hispanic. And I'm using those monolithic terms that we use to record their individual kids with individual identities. Over 80% are coming from lower socioeconomic families. 40% are multilingual learners. They offer 2 programs to support their language learners, Spanish Sheltered English Immersion and SLIFE, which is Students with Limited or Interrupted Formal Education, which are newcomers with English language development levels 1 or 2. They've got their hands full. They also have 30% of students identified with a disability. So they deliver inclusive education as well as housing, applied behavioral analysis, emotional impairment, and mild intellectual impairment strands. And remember, they're doing this in a building that doesn't fully fit their population. While the school is so much more than numbers and classifications, what both represent is the diversity of needs being served within their community. And they serve their diverse community with such heart. Dean Parker and I had the pleasure of attending The Lion King, which was the first musical the school had ever put on, and it was a joy-filled production. I'm still humming Hakuna Matata, but really struck me was how the production included every facet of their community. You just don't see that at every school, that every group of kids was represented. And the last piece, which was already elevated a couple of times, is that the school is in the process of being renamed. So it was presented at the last school committee, actually on Andrea's birthday, to become the Ruth Batson Academy, and which feels so fitting that the school would be named after a civil rights leader with the direction that it's moving in. So I think we're good, but keep your fingers crossed because the vote is next week. Okay, so the district ecosystem. Boston Public Schools is also in a truly catalyst moment. And that's because of this deep partnership with the city of Boston. So there's strong alignment between two striking and visionary female leaders right now. Mayor Michelle Wu, who is actually just here, and she is deeply committed to Boston Public Schools being the #1 choice for families and is backing up the priorities with resources and support. Proud to be a part of that administration. And Superintendent Mary Skipper, who, if you've met her, you can tell by her accent, she has deep roots in the area. And she has years of service in Boston Public Schools, and came nearly 2 years ago with a deep knowledge of the landscape and really ready to move. This alignment is allowing for amplified change work to happen in partnership. And I just want to highlight 2 priorities that are happening in BPS that are deeply affecting the, I'll call it BCLA McCormick, but I feel like I should be using this icon. I don't want to jinx anything. That the first is to move the district-wide inclusive education, and that's shifting the foundation for how students engage in their education. It's grounded in shifting policies and practices as well as belief systems, and is centered in students with disabilities as well as multilingual learners and multilingual learners with disabilities. There's a quote in the inclusive education plan: "The days of saying this type of student does not belong in this school, or we do not serve students with that specific disability, are over. All of our schools must recognize the abilities, languages, cultures, and life experiences of our students to teach them and help them reach their individual and diverse needs. Both student data and the lived experiences of our students, families, and staff prompt the urgent need to deliver on a promise and mandate of inclusion and the right of every student's preparedness for college, career, and life." This is especially important because there is a concentration of need in certain schools in our district. And it will take years to actually implement this well because of the structural shifts, but ultimately it results in students receiving a more equitable and more rigorous and high quality education, because all of our students benefit from diversity, which sometimes we forget that that means a variety of things. The other piece is the long-term facilities plan. Over the past year and a half, we've engaged in various community engagement. In our first wave, we heard from over 9,500 voices. And through that, we developed the BPS high quality student experience. It's our collective definition of what we want our children to experience in school: culturally affirming and rigorous learning experiences, wellness and enrichment, supportive network of adults, and the physical spaces to support learning. We took each of these priorities and translated them into metrics so that we can actually measure the physical spaces in every single one of our buildings to know if it's able to support the holistic learning experiences we want for all children in BPS. Physical spaces are incredibly important, but we know that so much more goes into a building to make it a robust and fulfilling learning experience. So the work to bolster the educational experience and the physical spaces must be parallel and intertwined. We actually also just applied well, we're in the process. We've gotten through the school committee vote. We now have city council vote to put together an MSBA proposal, which would allow us to actually fulfill that promise that has not yet happened on the BCLA McCormick site, to bring a new secondary school to the Columbia Point neighborhood. So wish us luck on that too. That would help us get state funding. So both bodies of work, inclusive education and physical spaces, support that high quality learning, but they also are both rooted in dismantling the systemic inequities and racism, as well as our policies and practices that have caused them to be needed in the first place. Taking ownership and putting in place strategic bandages while also solving for the roots is vital for making long-term systemic change. And that's what we're putting into place right now. I also just want to elevate that the work of community hub schools has been happening in Boston Public Schools in partnership with the BTU and YMCA, and has been funded also by the Lubin Foundation. And so there are 14 schools that exist in BPS already, and BCLA McCormick will be adding to that as well as others so that the community hub model can continue to be developed district-wide. Okay, just quickly on the importance of this partnership. I really feel like there are 4 pieces to elevate. The first is that the role of public education is to educate all. It's an absolutely huge charge, and it can't be done by a school system alone. So a city gathering around a school system and the role of educating our future generations is a deeply shared responsibility, and UMass is stepping up to be a part of that partnership. It also is a model for how other university partnerships can look, which will be an inspiration for the city as a whole, as well as an inspiration and model for other partnerships. The second is that both institutions make each other better. Often we think about what a university brings into a school district, but this is also important about what the school district is giving back to the University of Massachusetts. Both practitioner knowledge and academic knowledge are needed to drive school design and educational change, and the College of Education and Human Development is deeply aligned with the mission of BCLA McCormick for them to amplify each other. The third is experiencing an inspired education. And we don't always see this in all of our schools in BPS, although we're working that way. So being able to create boundary expanding joyful education, as well as experiences that happen in connection to the university. Nikki Giovanni was just here and was able to visit the school, as well as kids having access to a university research library and college courses here on the campus, such as the early college program. And the last piece is justice work. It takes holistic education, and we heard earlier about the pillars of the Community Hub School. And by building this partnership through an assets-based approach, as well as participatory action research, it both betters the school community, and it also communicates how we can make other schools better by sharing, elevating community voices to partner deeply with elevating schools in general. That means that's my time.
That actually means I have to pick up my kids from school, but not today. Forgot to turn that on.
But that actually will be. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Fernandez. Thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit. I'm really just gonna actually touch on some of the things that have already been said. But I want to start by answering your question of what really, what motivates me to do this work. Well, I am a product of public schools, and I started my career as a public school teacher in Chicago, and I'm the proud parent of a Boston public school student, where I also served on the parent council, and I was also a school committee member for Boston Public Schools. So I've been really dedicated to this project as well. Mostly working behind the scenes a little bit in terms of doing some of that community asset mapping. So I wanted to say a little bit though about I think what UMass Boston is bringing to this that is unique is our particular mission around anti-racist learning environments. And we do take that very seriously in terms of our response to the community and how we're really going to be mobilizing our resources here. I mean, I think about what Dr. Christie presented and what UCLA is doing, and we have all those things in that ecosystem, but we just haven't had, right, that kind of, strategic alignment of those resources. But we are really also, our approach is going to be about co-constructing these areas of engagement as well, and that we're reflecting and building upon the cultural wealth of the school community in and outside of the school to address these systemic inequities. One of the first things we're planning to do is form a community steering committee. That's critical, right? As we know, we have to involve the teachers, the students, the community partners, the families, the students, to really engage all those multiple stakeholders throughout the process, from the beginning of the process. So we are proposing, and I thank Dr. Granger for pointing this out, that one of the strengths as a university is, we're also researchers. And so we're hoping to also develop a longitudinal participatory action research studies on all of these different outcomes that, where the students, the teachers, the families will be co-researchers identifying these areas for inquiry, and also the collective analysis and identification of these problems that, and issues to be addressed. Also, we do believe that some of the outcomes that will be determined by this community steering committee. We imagine that, we can be looking at enrollment, the sense of belonging, student-teacher interactions, perceptions of school climate, graduation and college participation rates, teacher experiences, teacher retention. These are just starters of some of the ways that we want to also be documenting from the beginning what some of these outcomes will be. And then what we've already been doing is really important. Dr. Granger mentioned that this is a middle school. There, for example, there isn't a library, right? And so that's something that we're really proud and happy that, Jay Troy and others have already been taking a lead in our library to give access, right, to some of the kids already to be using our library. Some of our kids came to Tiffany, Professor Donaldson's lab, her brain lab during Neuroscience Week, and they were holding a human brain even. It's amazing. So some of that sharing of the labs, and really thinking about this, this school is just a couple, 600, 900 feet from here. This is their campus, and it will be, we'll really need to plan that out, right? How we can be having the kids, the young people here using our labs, our athletic facilities, etc. We're having their graduation here in this ballroom, so that's exciting. And the senior presentations will be on our campus as well at the Bayside. But these menu of possibilities, the inspiration from UCLA's work, we imagine having a community resource center, a legal clinic, a health clinic, biotech partnerships, like I said, these science labs, getting kids to become nurses. What we've done in the College of Education and Human Development is we've been meeting and really doing some of that asset mapping within our college, but we do need to expand it beyond the college, right? But it really makes sense for us to be focusing on that teacher preparation, right? All the programs that Dr. Martrell also mentioned around, Teach Next Year and other teacher preparation, the professional development that we can provide, the parent-family supports, the professional development around that as well. And then really important, and I see Dr. Cook here, this piece around the counseling school psychology program that we have and how much the mental health needs are. And so we're really focusing on mobilizing those assets, as well as the student enrichment and the out-of-school time. We have had partnerships, as was mentioned, with the TAG and Alerta programs that were also at the diverse schools. And we want to bring back those partnerships, not just with TAG, but with some of our other pre-collegiate programs and also with our sports leadership administration program. We have so many opportunities for youth development within our university. And then the early college. BCLA McCormick is already one of our pilot programs for our pilot in early college. We've been actually, us at the Gaston Institute, Fabian Torres Ardilla has been doing the college algebra there, both in Spanish, so there's that piece that is something we bring uniquely as UMass Boston, that piece of the multilingual assets from our faculty as well. And so I'll just wrap up by saying that, UMass Boston has had these over 40 years of partnership with BPS and with our schools here. And it's been a bumpy ride occasionally, but we're really excited about this opportunity to partner around the pedagogy, the curriculum that will be anti-racist, and our shared values around social justice is also positioning UMass Boston really as the leader within BPS, partnerships there, but I think in the city, really, because that's what our mission is addressing systemic racial inequities and transforming public education. So with that, I will turn it over to our distinguished moderator, Thank you.
I know we were operating on negative time here, but I want to thank each of our panelists for, I heard your passion, I heard your commitment, and again, I'm really proud to be a part of this, to be a part of a team that sees this important partnership and sees the importance of working with our colleagues at BCLA McCormick also very excited to see Andrea. I saw her earlier at the event. Tara and I had the pleasure of going with Nikki Giovanni to the school, and we felt that special sauce that you've been talking about. They really are incredible. The teachers, the staff, the students, and the way in which all the students are made to feel like they have the agency to ask questions of Nikki Giovanni, to stand up and recite their poetry in front of Nikki Giovanni. So I really am proud about this relationship. I have a couple of questions that I just want our panelists and even our speakers to think about. How are some of the ways that you envision organizing resources for achieving this and making sure that it has a lasting effect?
Well, I do know that Chancellor Marcelo is going to do everything within his power. I know he's been probably stalking Secretary Tutwiler